Hey, this is Jason from Grandaddy, and I'm at Amoeba in Hollywood, and this is What's in My Bag.
In the town where I'm living now, this is the town where I'm living now.
On a slightly grim note, appetite for self-destruction, the spectacular crash of the record industry in the digital age. Kind of feeling like I could learn some stuff here. I'm still kind of mystified about what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years with the music industry, so any little bit of information I can get to clarify some of that.
Has it changed anything about the way you put out records?
I think it did for a little bit, and then I just kind of, in a weird twist of fate, it sort of brought me back around to why I started doing it in the first place. And I think I took some solace in that, knowing that it may have created a bit of weeding out of people who maybe got into it for the wrong reasons, or whoever ended up not having staying power for. I think being driven by the need to do it and the love for doing it and the passion behind it, it ends up kind of, you're gonna do it no matter what, so there's that. Anyways, I might learn something from reading some of that.
No longer did every Dave Matthews Band fan drop by Albums on the Hill for a $16.99 CD. One fan would drop by for the CD and burn copies for the other 50 kids on his dorm hall.
Got a book called I Love My Bike. I'm a big cyclist. I'm an avid cyclist. I like looking at pictures of bikes, and there seems to be lots of pictures of bikes in here. In addition to that, there looks like there's little testimonials from the people about why they like the particular bike that they're having photographed. And I did notice on page 115, there's a very famous, renowned skateboarder named John Cardiel, who ends up being in here, which is pretty awesome. He had a pretty devastating injury, brain injury, so I think he couldn't walk for a long time, but a lot of his rehab had a lot to do with the fact that he got into riding bikes. He couldn't actually skateboard anymore, which is kind of insane, because he was one of the best, one of the absolute best. So that's cool. It was a surprise that he was even in here. The main reason I got it because I like looking at bikes. I like some good bike porn. Let's see. This was a bit of a wild card. I know he's a renowned author. His name is Bill Bryson. I like books about traveling and road trips and stuff. And this one is called The Lost Continent, Travels in Small Town America. But the thing that sold me on it was somewhere in the back, actually in the front. It says, the kind of book Steinbeck might have written if he'd traveled with David Letterman instead of his dog Charlie the poodle. That did it for me right there.
I wanted to step outside my front door and be somewhere. As soon as I was old enough, I left. I left Des Moines and Iowa and the United States and the war in Vietnam and Watergate and settled across the world.
Aha. I'm a huge Aha fan. It was kind of something I had to keep quiet and be somewhat shameful about for a long time, and especially in my youth when I was skateboarding, listening to punk rock and into more experimental types of music. It was one of my guilty pleasures was Aha, and I'm glad I stuck with it because they've kind of stood the test of time. I actually went to see him at the Hollywood Bowl playing with the LA Phil, and that was, I hardly ever go to concerts. And I was just like, all right, if I'm going to go to 1 or 2 shows a year, this is going to be one of them. And it was pretty amazing. Anyways, I don't know what this is. I turned it over, and there's a whole bunch of songs I've never heard of before. So there's going to be some pretty cool little surprises on here that, me being a big fan, to discover a bunch of songs that you haven't heard by one of your favorite bands is pretty cool. So yeah, Aha original album series. Slight left turn here. I bought a t-shirt, Bad Brains. Bad Brains' Rock for Light album was probably one of my most influential albums growing up as a skateboarder and as a kid in some nameless suburban town. It was really hard to find music where I lived, and I remember I had a friend of mine. He's like one of those friends who'd go on road trips and come back, and he'd have a stack of records that he bought at some cool record store in some cool town wherever he went. So we'd sift through those, and I'd have the opportunity to kind of hone in on what it was I connected with. And I discovered the Bad Brains through one of the albums that he brought home. It just blew my mind. So now we wrap it up, I guess, with this is probably sonically one of the best recorded albums that exist in the 80s, I suppose, and even beyond, before and after. Again, one of my favorite bands of all time, Talk Talk. This particular album is called Color of Spring. They did a lot more commercially digestible, slightly poppier stuff, but still a bit of melancholy before this, and then they started transitioning into more sort of artsy, experimental, not so constrained by pop music constructs, and it started getting almost jazzy and almost, it just got weirder and weirder. And then after this was Spirit of Eden and Laughing Stock, but stuff started getting really, really interesting at the beginning of their experimental phase with The Color of Spring. And sort of shunning the limelight too, and just battling record labels and just their productions and their budgets went over, and they're just getting sued left and right, and but it was all in the name of artistic integrity, and it was all kind of spearheaded by the main guy, Mark Hollis, who unfortunately is not with us anymore. And eventually they fizzled because they were too real and too badass. And then once again everybody tried to sue them, and they fell away into obscurity, but not because they went on to influence like tons and tons and tons of people, myself included. So, yeah. Anyways.
Thank you so much. This was great.
You're very welcome.
Here comes the chaos, perfectly on time again. Is it ever